What if the month you were born wasn't random? Not a coincidence, not just a date on a calendar your parents circled and forgot. What if, before you ever took your first breath, before you ever cried, before you ever opened your eyes to this world, something was already being prepared for you, a grace, a mission, a battle, a promise? Most people go their entire lives never asking that question. They celebrate birthdays, blow out candles, and move on. But Padre Pio, a man who saw what most of us cannot, who bore the wounds of Christ on his own hands and feet, who spent decades in a small monastery while spiritually touching millions, Padre Pio never looked at anything as accidental. Not a single detail, not a single moment, and certainly not the month a soul enters this world. He believed with absolute conviction that every life is wrapped inside a providence so precise, so personal, that even the season in which you were born carries a meaning deeper than you've ever been told. And today, that's exactly what we're going to explore together. Because there is something hidden in your birth month, a spiritual signature, you could call it, a mark that may explain certain struggles you've carried for years, certain longings you've never been able to name, certain moments in your life that felt too heavy, or too meaningful, or to be ordinary. Stay with me until the end, because the final revelation in this video may be the one that reframes everything for you. And right now, before we go any further, write in the comments the month you were born, just the month, that's all. Think of it as a small act of openness, a way of saying, I'm ready to understand something new about the path I've been walking. There's a verse in the book of Jeremiah that has stopped people cold for centuries. God speaks directly to the prophet and says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." Not after. Not once you proved yourself. Before. Before the world had any record of you. Before your name existed. Before your mother felt the first kick. God already knew you by name. Padre Pio returned to that passage often, not as a theological footnote, but as a living reality. He understood something that most of us spend our whole lives slowly catching up to, that we are not accidents of biology, we are deliberate, we are chosen, and the circumstances surrounding our arrival into this world, including the month, the liturgical season, the spiritual atmosphere of that particular time, are woven into who we are, at a level most people never examine. This isn't about astrology. It isn't about horoscopes or cosmic energies. Those things take something sacred and reduce it to something shallow. What we're talking about here is something older, something more serious, the liturgical calendar of the Church. A calendar that isn't just a schedule of feast days and fasting seasons. It is, if you look closely enough, a map, a spiritual map of the entire journey of salvation, and every soul born into this world enters that map at a specific point. Padre Pio had an extraordinary awareness of this map. He could discern the spiritual condition of souls, sense the presence of angels and demons, and understand the invisible threads connecting a person's history to their eternal calling. And he never separated a person from the time in which they lived or from the time in which they arrived. He once said that the souls who suffer most are often the ones loved most deeply by God. Not because God enjoys their pain, but because he trusts them with it. He gives the heaviest crosses to the ones whose roots go deep enough to hold. That idea, that suffering is not random, that mission is not accidental, is at the very heart of what we're exploring today. January opens the year with cold and silence. There is something stripped bare about that month. The celebrations are over, the decorations come down, and what's left is simply the beginning. The Church begins the year honoring Mary, the Mother of God, on the first day. And souls born in January often carry something of that quiet strength. They tend to be people who know how to begin again, who can stand in the silence after something ends and still find the will to move forward. Their spiritual challenge, more often than not, is learning to trust the process, to believe that the new beginning God is offering is worth the vulnerability it requires. February is deceptive. It is the shortest month, but it carries enormous weight. It holds Candlemas, the feast of the presentation of Jesus in the temple, a moment when an old man named Simeon looked at a 40-day-old child and prophesied both salvation and sorrow. And a sword will pierce your own soul too, he told Mary. Souls born in February often live between those two realities, deep joy and deep sorrow, sometimes arriving within hours of each other. They tend to feel things profoundly, to grieve genuinely, and to love in ways that cost them something. Their gift is empathy. Their challenge is learning not to be consumed by it. March and April shift everything. These are Lenten months, Passion months, months where the entire church turns toward the cross. A woman once shared something quietly remarkable. She was born on Good Friday. Her entire life, she said, had been marked by a series of losses that eventually led to what she could only describe as a resurrection. Not dramatic, not announced, but real. Something in her had died and come back different, stronger. She had no language for it until someone pointed her toward the spirituality of Holy Week. Padre Pio taught that the souls who walk most closely with Christ's suffering are often the ones he is preparing for the deepest transformation. If you were born in March or April, you may recognize that pattern in your own story. The falls, yes, but also the rising. May is Mary's month, and there is something almost unmistakable about souls born in May. They tend to be drawn to her, the rosary, the apparitions, the quiet intercession. Not always consciously. Sometimes it's just that when everything falls apart, their hands reach for a rosary they haven't held in years. There's a gravitational pull that they can't quite explain. Padre Pio's own devotion to Mary was one of the defining features of his spiritual life. He once said, "Love Our Lady and make her loved." Souls born in May often feel that calling in their bones, even before they fully understand it. June belongs to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. It is a month of reparation, of love that goes unanswered and keeps loving anyway, of wounds that stay open not out of weakness but out of willingness. Souls born in June often carry a compassion that is almost difficult to live with. They grieve things that don't belong to them. They feel the weight of suffering that isn't theirs. They pray without knowing why, driven by an urgency they can't name. Padre Pio, who bore the wounds of Christ in his own body, understood this kind of love. He once described it as the most misunderstood of all spiritual gifts, because from the outside it just looks like pain. July is the month of the precious blood of Christ. There is nothing soft about that image. Blood poured out, a price paid, a battle already won, but still being fought in every human heart. And August carries the feast of the Assumption, the moment when Mary was taken, body and soul, into heaven. Together, these months hold a spirituality that is less about quiet contemplation and more about active physical courage. Souls born in July and August often find themselves in the role of protector long before they choose it. They become the ones their families call in a crisis, the ones who feel something shift in the atmosphere of a home before anyone else can articulate it. They wake at odd hours with an urgency to pray for someone, and later discover that the person needed it at exactly that moment. That experience can feel disorienting when you don't have language for it. But it is not anxiety. It is not overreaction. It is a specific form of intercession, and it tends to intensify rather than fade as these souls grow older. If that resonates, pay attention to it. Don't explain it away. September arrives with a quieter kind of weight. It is the month dedicated to Scripture, to the living Word of God. And souls born in September tend to carry a hunger for truth that can make ordinary answers feel insufficient. They push back, they question. They need to understand why, not just what. Their faith, when it finally takes root, is not inherited. It is earned, wrestled for. And because of that, it tends to be remarkably durable under pressure. Padre Pio had a particular tenderness for souls like this. He never dismissed their doubts. He knew that a soul honest enough to question is far closer to God than a soul too comfortable to ask. October is the month of the Rosary, the Battle of Lepanto, the apparitions of Fatima. It is a month that carries the memory of prayers that changed history, not through spectacle, but through perseverance. Souls born in October often work this way, quietly, consistently, invisibly. They may go years without seeing the fruit of what they're doing, but their prayers are structural. They hold things up that would otherwise fall. They may never know in this life what their faithfulness prevented. That is both the burden and the dignity of being an October soul. November stops everything. It is the month of the dead, the holy souls in purgatory, and there is simply no way to soften what that means. Padre Pio spoke of these souls with a directness that unsettled people. He said they came to him, that they waited near him in the night, asking for masses, for rosaries, for someone who would remember them by name. Souls born in November often carry this same sensitivity without knowing its source. A heaviness around anniversaries of loss, a pull toward cemeteries, dreams of people long gone that feel too present to dismiss. This is not something to be afraid of. It may be a form of kinship. A soul born in the month of the dead who carries as part of their vocation the ongoing work of remembering. And then December, the month that holds its breath. Advent is not a cheerful season despite how the world dresses it. It is a season of genuine longing, of waiting for something that has been promised but not yet fully given. Souls born in December tend to understand waiting at a cellular level. They have often spent significant portions of their lives hoping for something that took much longer to arrive than they expected. A healing, a reconciliation, a door that finally opened after years of standing in front of it. Their gift is not optimism. It is something richer and harder. The ability to hold hope past the point where hope seems reasonable. And that is one of the rarest things a human being can offer to the people around them. Here is where this reflection takes a turn that some may find uncomfortable. Padre Pio understood, clearly, practically, and without drama, that the spiritual life is not only a journey toward God, it is also a resistance to everything that opposes that journey. And he noticed something over decades of spiritual direction. The souls with the clearest callings often face the most targeted opposition. Not random hardship, targeted resistance. Souls born in Marian months who faced specific attacks against their purity or their relationships with their mothers. Souls born in months of reparation who lived through betrayals that seemed designed to break their trust in the church. Souls born in months of mercy who spent years being falsely accused, misunderstood, left to defend themselves against things they never did. This is not superstition, it is discernment. The kind of discernment that Padre Pio practiced every day in that confessional in San Giovanni Rotondo, looking into the eyes of thousands of people and seeing not just their sins, but their wounds, their callings, their battles. He once told a spiritual directee, "The enemy does not waste arrows on empty fields." If your life has felt like a battlefield, if certain struggles seem disproportionate, if certain wounds keep reopening, if certain doors keep closing in ways that feel almost personal, perhaps you are not weak. Perhaps you are significant. And perhaps the battle you're in is proportionate, not to your failures, but to your potential. That reframing does not make the pain disappear, but it changes what you do with it. So what do you do with all of this? Padre Pio was not a man of vague inspiration. He was practical. He gave people specific things to do, specific prayers to pray, specific habits to build. So in that spirit, here is something concrete. If you were born in a Marian month, May or October, pray the Rosary more faithfully, not as an obligation but as a response to something already present in your life. If you were born in November, consider offering a Mass for the souls in purgatory, particularly for the forgotten ones, the ones in your own family line who may have no one else praying for them. Padre Pio said that such prayers can free souls who've been waiting for a very long time. And sometimes freeing them brings unexpected peace into our own lives. If you were born in a Lenten month, consider making a small chosen sacrifice, not as punishment but as participation, as a way of saying to God, "I understand in some small way what the cross costs, and I am willing." If you were born in a month tied to spiritual warfare, July, August, or even the quieter battles of September, protect your home. Use holy water. Keep a crucifix visible. Pray the prayer to Saint Michael. These are not superstitions. They are the tools the Church has given us, and Padre Pio used them constantly. One practical suggestion that requires nothing but willingness. Tonight, before you sleep, sit for 5 minutes in silence. Think about the month you were born. Think about the spiritual themes of that season. Then simply pray, "Lord, what did you intend when you placed me here, in this time, in this season? Show me what I'm carrying. Show me what it's for." That's not a magic formula. It's an honest question. And honest questions prayed with a quiet heart tend to receive answers, sometimes immediately, sometimes slowly, but rarely never. There is something Padre Pio said toward the end of his life that has stayed with many who heard it. Pray, hope, and don't worry. That phrase is often quoted as comfort, and it is comfort. But it is also something else. It is a description of a life lived in trust, a life that has looked at its own suffering, its own confusion, its own unanswered questions, and decided to believe that none of it is wasted. That is the deepest invitation of this reflection. Not to have all the answers about your birth month, not to build a theology around a calendar, but to allow yourself to consider, seriously, prayerfully, that your life is not random, that the moment of your arrival was seen, that the season into which you were born carries a spiritual fingerprint, and that God, who knew you before he formed you, has been working through every detail of your story, including the ones that still hurt. You are not common. You are not an accident. You were thought about. You were loved into existence. You were sent. And whatever month brought you into this world, there is a grace tied to it that you may not have fully claimed yet. A saint praying for you from that season. A calling woven into that time. A depth of meaning waiting to be explored with an open and willing heart. If this reflection stirred something in you, if something here landed in a place that surprised you, write in the comments the month you were born and one word that describes how this made you feel. Just one word. You don't need to explain it. Let it sit there honestly as a small offering. And if you know someone who has been walking through a season of confusion, of feeling like their struggles don't make sense, of wondering whether their life has any real direction, share this video with them, not to give them answers, but to open a door. Before you go, this channel exists because people like you choose to keep it alive. Every like, every share, every comment is not just an algorithm gesture. It is a way of saying, this kind of conversation matters, and I want more people to find it. If something in this video stayed with you, consider leaving a like. Consider sharing it with someone in your life who is in the middle of a season they can't yet make sense of. And if you feel drawn to become a member of this community, know that your support goes directly into making more of this. More depth, more honesty, more space for faith that takes real questions seriously. We are not building a following here. We are building a community, and we are glad you are in it. May Our Lady cover the month of your birth with her protection. May the Sacred Heart of Jesus heal whatever wounds that season carried. May St. Michael guard your home and your family. And may you never again look at your birthday as something ordinary, because it never was.